Yes! Since its release in year 2, Gambit was met with some mixed reviews. Some flat out hate this game mode, some play it here and there, or some play it as an alternative to Crucible to some extent. Similarly to PvP, Gambit has seen its fair share of metas, with linear fusion rifles dominating the invasion game, while Blade Barrage and Chaos Reach are still some of the best methods of rapid primeval melting. I've seen a lot of supers excel in Gambit, but I don't ever hear anyone talk about this one. I'm referring to Bottom Tree Daybreak, or better known as Attunement of Flame. I've been using this super in Gambit and PvP since around the time Forsaken was first released, and in this video you will find out how deadly the super can be when it comes to ad clear and invasions respectively. This video will be split up into tips on how to effectively invade with the super and the best way to clear ads. So with that being stated, let's get it in. Gambit is a game mode where you'll be spending 95% of your time slaying hordes of trash mobs with the occasional major or two thrown into the horde. Proper super management is paramount in Gambit, and with the Attunement of Flame's Everlasting Fire perk, you'll be able to perpetuate the duration of your super for unbelievably long stretches of time, while also generating orbs for your fire team. Everlasting Fire states that Daybreak's duration will extend after killing enemies, and without it, you're normally limited to throwing about 7 or 8 swords before your super ends. This perk makes Daybreak so useful for clearing ads. There have been times where I've extended my super to almost an entire minute and still had enough super energy to kill some of the ads spawning on the other part of the map. The only problem with Everlasting Fire is that it really relies on killing enemies with a single projectile, and if enemies aren't dying in a single hit, you'll end up wasting your entire super. Realistically, all it takes is some attention to detail and super management, and you will be an ad clearing machine. Before you approach any part of the map where ads have spawned, take a couple of seconds to analyze the area and try to focus on the areas where the ads are tightly grouped together. This is where the Faded for the Flame perk comes into play. Not only does this perk enable tracking for the Dawnblade projectiles, it'll also conjure for a traveling streak of fire upon impact. This streak of fire will easily kill trash mobs when they're closely grouped together. Also, pay attention to how many yellow bar enemies are present in the vicinity. If it's possible, try and avoid the yellow bars and shielded enemies, as they'll take 2 to 3 Dawnblade projectiles and die. And you want to avoid this at all costs, because once again, the goal is to kill the minor enemies with 1 single shot each to keep your super going as long as possible. Whenever it's my turn to clear ads with my super, I always communicate with my team that it's their job to kill the beefier enemies while collecting motes and orbs of light. When it comes to challenging shielded enemies, I can only really recommend going against solar shielded enemies, because the explosion from popping their shield combined with the streak of flames from Faded of the Flame will make short work of almost anything within proximity. In this clip here, I use my super very poorly and recklessly and costed my team a lot of orbs of light and mote generation. I challenged 2 big shanks and both of them took no less than 2 swords to die, and it didn't help that a few of my swords hit the environment instead of the ads. Even though the Dawnblade projectiles will track enemies, the tracking isn't perfect, and it isn't unheard of for your projectiles to get stuck on the environment. You can avoid this by ensuring yourself that you have a clear shot at the enemies, and don't forget that you can hover mid-air during the entire duration of Daybreak. Attacking from above is one of the most recommended ways of approaching ads, because from above you have a clear field of view, and it's significantly easier to throw your projectiles when you can see everything below you. Now, believe it or not, Daybreak can be one of the most deadly and annoying supers for the enemy team to deal with during an invasion. Since Gambit maps are big and spacious, invaders will most commonly engage the enemy fire team from a distance. This is almost the sole reason why linear fusion rifles dominated in Gambit for the longest time, because these days invaders rarely ever invade with their supers active, and even when they do, it's normally something that enables them to safely engage from a distance. The best example of this would be Golden Gun. However, Daybreak enables you to throw the enemy team for a loop by closing in the gap and overwhelming them with tracking projectiles. One of the perks I mentioned earlier, Faded for the Flame, is the main selling point here. As stated previously, Dawnblade projectiles don't have perfect tracking, but they're very forgiving and have incredibly predictable trajectory, and once you get the hang of when to throw them, you can actually curveball them into enemies, giving them little to no time to react. The fact that these projectiles track enables you to get away with not being 100% accurate. Again, tracking for Bottom Tree Dawnblade projectiles is very forgiving, but please don't try to throw your swords across the map thinking that you're going to hit somebody. They'll track, but they won't do all the work for you. You'll still need to learn their behavior and trajectory. Just make sure when you're using your super, you're pacing yourself and not recklessly throwing swords, because that's the easiest way to lose all your super energy. Light level advantages are enabled when you invade, but there should never be a point in time when an enemy guardian will survive more than 2 sword hits outside of their super. I guess you could say provided if you're within 100 light levels of the enemies. At least that's what happened to me in my experience, because in this clip here, I was around 540 light while the enemy team was 650 across the board, and I didn't have a problem one-shotting anyone with my super. One more thing, if you ever invade using this super, make sure you do it the second that you step through the portal or before, because the the long animation of the super's cast time can get you screwed over. It isn't out of the realm of possibilities for an enemy team to be conveniently within the vicinity of your spawn point when you first enter the invasion portal. I've actually died within 2 seconds of invading with my super active, so be wary of this. The second that you step foot on the other side, get a quick glance at where all the enemies are on the map. Engage the enemies closest to you and try to kill them before they can convey an accurate call out on you to the other members of their fire team. If you bank 5 or more motes before you invade, it's pretty obvious that most, if not all, the enemy team will be circumferenced around the mote bank, trying to kill the blockers as quickly as possible. With that being stated, banking immediately, then casting your super, then invading is probably the safest route to take, especially if your fire team members have also banked. You'll have ample time to catch the enemy fire team off guard, because they'll be too overwhelmed by blockers by the time you invade it. The obvious goal is to invade and get an army of 1 with your super, but don't feel bad if you don't accomplish much of anything, because if you die, the blockers will still be a big enough inconvenience to slow down the enemy team's progress towards the primeval. Because the second that the other side is notified that you've invaded, they'll either focus their attention on you or try and kill the blockers as quickly as they possibly can, but you'll have the upper hand regardless. But that does it for this one, everybody. I hope that this guide was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, drop me a like and subscribe to the channel for more elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.